All right, so I want to just invite everybody officially and start our anniversary celebration goal setting event for 2026. And for those of you where this is the first time you've done this with us, we're so glad to have you with us today. Um, we started GEMS as an institute, as a college, a few years ago during all of the craziness of the pandemic. And we had a little grand opening celebration when that happened. And so every year since then, we've had a little anniversary celebration, which is a way of kind of touching base with community and letting everybody kind of get to know each other a little bit better. Um, and the last few years, we've been doing goal setting activities. And I love this because I don't know about you, but I've become very disenchanted with the idea of New Year's resolutions. I think most people's resolutions are boring. I don't know if you saw my rant about this in the newsletter, but like, how many people do you know where it's all like, I'm going to make more money and I'm going to lose weight. And then next year it's like, I'm going to make more money and I'm going to lose weight. Every year it looks exactly the same. And there's a lack of creativity and there's a lack of follow through. And there's a lack of understanding maybe the energetic patterns that are in place that keep us in certain places, right? We all do various kinds of holistic work. We all know that there are energetic patterns and stresses that keep us in certain states, right? And if we want different results, we need to shift what's underneath it so that we get to those different results. So a couple of years ago, we did a goal setting activity where we were working with the five elements and looking at like, what do fire goals look like for this year? What do earth goals look like for this year, right? And it gave us a way of kind of categorizing those different kinds of energy in our lives. Last year, we did a chakra goal setting activity, which was fun because we're working with a different kind of energy pattern in the body. And this idea of being able to, this is my computer telling me the printer's still not working. That's fine. Um, being able to kind of work with each of those energetic centers and understand how we have goals that respond to the root, goals that are more about our heart, goals that are more about our creativity, right? And how do we find where those blocks are and work through it? When we were looking at what to do this year, Ezra and I in chatting came up with the idea of working with the archetypes. And what I think is interesting about this, and what I wanted to share with you before we kind of get started, is that when we've done this in previous years, we've gone, oh, okay, goals about relationships might fall more into an earth element or more into a sacral chakra. Goals about work might fall more into a wood element, or maybe they fall into a solar plexus chakra or something like that. We've been looking more at like the energy of the goals, which is very cool. But when we're talking about the archetypes, I'm much more interested in like, how are we this year, as opposed to what are we this year? So for me, this is a mind shift between like, well, this is the thing I want to do, or this is the habit I want to break, or this is the amount that I want to acquire, or whatever it is, to like, how am I showing up? And understanding that when I change how I show up and how I experience this year, I'm going to have different energy. I'm going to attract different things. There's going to be different results. And so I'm really curious and interested to see how this works for us today. Um, it's a new concept for me, and so I'm hoping that it's fun and we get a chance to kind of play with it. So, a bit of a schedule for our time together today, just so that we all feel like we're on the same page here. My intention was that we would start with a little check-in, and we did a lot of that actually before we started the recording. So people that are just watching this, we kind of went through and just checked in with where people are from and everything like that. But the idea would be to maybe do some switch-ons and kind of get ourselves grounded and landed, and then start going through those different archetypes. We'll take a minute to talk about each of the archetypes, and then a couple minutes for us to make notes, do any brainstorming or anything like that. We'll only take a couple minutes with it as a group, but of course, it makes sense that you might go back to that and work with it a little bit more later. And then when we finish going through these different archetypes and we have some ideas, then I would love for us to do a quick 5-element balance as a group together, so that we have like moved through this energy and we can kind of feel where we're going. And then we'll see what we're doing with how we're doing with time. And maybe we'll do some sharing at that point. Or for people that are involved in the Discord server, we might throw a bunch of those things into our channels on there and chat about it later on. In years past, we've also sometimes taken a study hall evening to talk about like how we want to actually implement our plans and find some accountability buddies and that sort of thing after doing our goal setting. Does that sound good? Do we have any questions or any suggestions or anything like that before we're starting? All right, amazing. So I'm going to shift this here, okay? And okay, well, that's fine. Let's go ahead and do a little switch on activity. So for anyone who's not familiar with Touch for Health, I'm just going to walk you through it quickly. We're going to put one hand over our navel and one hand in the little hollow spaces right underneath the collarbones. This is the end of the kidney meridian. We're just going to give it a little rub. And what this is doing is really working with integration between hemispheres in the brain and helping that flow of energy. And then we switch hands. And then keeping one hand on the navel, we're going to take the other hand and go above and below the lips. We're working with the ends of the central and governing vessels here. This is about working with projection fibers in the brain and the idea of like information going up and down. And then we switch hands. And then lastly, we're going to put one hand on the navel and we're going to go to the back. So we're on the bottom of the tailbone, just the beginning of the governing vessel. Working with association fibers in the brain, working with front and back integration. Switch hands. And then if you want to, you can give your ears a little pull. Okay. So, excellent. I don't know if you all saw the PDF I had put out where we have this cute little sketchbook. I wanted something that felt like a journal or something like that. And if you want to use that, it's available on the website. If you don't, I mean, writing in anything is going to work for you just fine. I'm going to share a screen so that we can be looking at this together. Okay. So here's our Archetype sketchbook for 2026. And starting here with the wood element. And so when we're looking at the wood element, when we start looking at the archetypes, here's where we have warrior kind of archetypes, and we're using the idea here of the general. And the general is dependable, stable. Wood is often about leadership, right? And about being able to use your personal power to get stuff done. So that's the thing with our wood element general kind of archetype. It's not always fun. It's not always likable, but it gets stuff done. And so I was thinking about how do we bring in this energy of like buckling down, getting it done, being able to kind of fight through anything that needs it. The other part of this, though, if you look at the list of characteristics, there's things like growing and strength and flexibility. And we know that the other picture that is often shown with the wood element and this archetype is the idea of the tree. And the idea behind the tree is that it is strong, it's rooted, but it should be able to bend with the wind and not break. And so we also are looking at that idea of like what's new, what's growing. How are we bringing some of that kind of energy of like beginner's energy, new energy, that fresh excitement in something, adaptability, flexibility? How are we bringing that into our world? Okay. So what I was thinking is that I'm going to set a little timer and just give us, say, 3 minutes with each of these. And if people feel like they need another moment, when that time is up, we can, find more time. But just so that we have some kind of click. Uh, and so take a moment and make any notes about how you're bringing that energy in this year, or what goals you have that align with that kind of energy. Here we go. Does anybody feel like they want another minute, or are we okay? I can't see everybody on my screen, so if you are saying yes, make sure that you like actually speak up. All right, let's scroll down here and let's look at the fire element. So when we talk about the fire element, it's often personified with this idea of the wizard. And when we say the wizard here, I mean, sometimes that's going to have different connotations for different people. But the idea is that fire is energetic, right? So there's passion, there's excitement, it's joyful. There's also a certain amount of power here, but usually when we think about like fire wizard type power, it's a little different than wood general type power. As in our power here is more like through charisma, right? This is more about enlisting other people, or convincing other people to kind of want to join your crusade, right? It's about getting people to come on board and be excited with you, as opposed to like, I'm the boss and I'm telling you what to do. if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of a difference here, right? Um, Fire people, like when we're using this wizard energy, we can be compelling and engaging. And usually that engagement comes from our own excitement about what's happening. So as we become joyful and emotional about what's going on, other people see that and respond to it. Now, the tricky thing about this as a archetype is that the wizard is also a little bit fickle. So while the general will usually put their head down and just get it done, the wizard wants to chase sparkly things, right? So fire energy is also, it's flickering and it's changing. And we can get excited about something and then we get bored, right? And so when I was thinking about this as an archetype in relation to how we're showing up this year, yeah, how are you getting excited? Where are you getting excited? How are you engaging with others? Or do you need to have other people come on board for one of your goals or something to work? But also, do you have a plan for like how you're going to maintain energy on something once it's no longer new and exciting, right? Like, do we have a plan for follow through? A plan for creating a habit, for whatever it is to kind of keep our nose to the grindstone a little bit, ideally while keeping all of that like magnetic kind of energy. So let's think about that for a minute and we'll give us a couple minutes to make some notes here. Are we ready? All right, let's go. Does anybody need another minute? wasn't even watching the clock. I was getting distracted with that one because I think a lot of my stuff right now is aiming that way. All right. If we move down here, we look at the earth element and that idea of the mother. And when we say the mother here, of course, this can be literally being a mother, but this is also about what that energy kind of looks like, right? So when we talk about mother energy, when we're looking at the earth, we're looking at energy that is nurturing and also that is nurtured. And I'm bringing that out. I put nurturing on here, but like nurtured because one of the places where a lot of us get stuck, I know from some of our conversations within City Hall contexts and things like that, is a lot of us are in spaces where we are always sort of giving, right? We are taking care of kids, we're taking care of relationships, we're taking care of companies, we're taking care of our friends, we're taking care of our parents. Um, Earth Mother energy is also about who's taking care of me. And if that's not going to be someone else, how am I taking care of me? Right. And I know I don't want to rant about this too much, but like, I don't know, you watch people's videos on like social media and stuff like that, and it's all about self-care, and some of it feels very superficial. Like self-care isn't just face masks and manicures, right? Self-care is being able to set clear boundaries. Self-care is making sure that things get done so that your work week feels easier. Self-care is asking for help when you need it. Self-care is a lot of different things. And so part of this is about thinking about how we're nurturing others and how we're showing up in that space for others. But also I want you to remember, like, how are you taking care of yourself? Making sure that you're full so that you can cast fireball, like we saw in the last one, right? Uh, we need to have this energy here first. So Earth Mother energy is also about being centered and grounded and balanced. Those of you who have done 5 element classes with me in the past, you know that like in older traditional Chinese medicine diagrams, the earth element would be shown in the center, and then you would get the other elements around it in directions. But the idea that the earth is what holds everything in place, right? This is the gravity, it's the anchor. And so we need that anchor to feel balanced and in place so that we can do all of the other things. So what do you come back to, right? Um, and I also wrote the word careful here, which maybe sounds kind of silly when we're talking about goals and, you know, what's getting us excited and everything for this next year. But this is also the energy that allows us to think twice before we do something, right? That allows us to make sure that there is good grounding to the plan before we go all in. This is where we're able to kind of consider. So looking at how do we want to bring that kind of energy, or where do we need more of this kind of energy as we move through? And we might think about Earth in relation to some of the other things that we've already written as well. So let's go ahead and take a couple minutes to think about our Earth Mother Archetype goals. You need another moment?
Alexis, maybe you already addressed this, but what can you be specific on what you mean by harvest?
Yeah. Um, when we look at the five elements in like the year cycle,
Okay,
usually, uh, so the earth element is associated with that like late summer, early fall, and it's the idea of things being ready. Um, and so there's that concept of like the earth's bounty, right? And so when
right.
we are looking at, say we're looking at a project and we want to put a project into a five element kind of context, we begin with wood and that's where we start to like get the ideas. And then we move into a fire state that's more about excitement and recruitment and getting things kind of done. But then when we move into earth, it's more about like, okay, it's now at maturity. It's becoming full. It's becoming ready. Um, and sometimes we're not good at noticing that something is done. Like, did we bake it till it's done? And now do we get to harvest it, right? Um, and sometimes it's like we don't get things to that point. So we have all of these like irons in the fire, but nothing actually becomes ready. So that was my thought. And I guess I kind of skipped that when I was going over the intro part for it. So thank you for asking. Does that
That
make sense?
makes total sense. Yes, thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah. It's a funny one for me. I was thinking about this the other day because we are trying to grow a lot of our own food and stuff like that. And I'm really bad for missing when something is done. So, like for instance, Braden brought a bunch of radishes from the greenhouse the other day, and they're like this big and like gross and woody, right? Beautiful. Because they got left too long in the ground because nobody noticed that they were done and actually just pulled them. And I was thinking about that, right? And like, are we bad for that bit, right? I'm really good at working towards things and sometimes bad with going, oh, okay, well, that might be finished now, right? Or it might be time to reap something out of that now. Yeah. All right. So let's scroll down to the next one. When we look at the metal elements, we have this idea of the night, right? And so metal we know is the material of our shield and our sword. It's how we protect ourselves and others. And so our metal element is about protection. But the other part of metal is that it's about um, like how we can take ore, for instance, like metals out of the earth. They need to go through a process of refining, right? Like gold in its raw form doesn't look like something very special. But once it goes through a process of refining and polishing, it becomes this incredibly valuable, precious kind of metal that we use to adorn. And so it's that idea of like, what are we perfecting? What are we refining? Are we making something perfect over time? Are we getting rid of anything that is keeping it from being perfect, right? Because metal can also be about the idea of decrease. So if Earth is something being in its full potential, that mother bountiful kind of energy, metal is about paring it down now, right? And getting rid of anything superfluous and figuring out what's necessary and then going from there. And when we say protective on here, we know that metal is also a lot about boundaries. So where are the knights stationed, right? The knights are stationed at gates. The knights are stationed at doorways. They're about making sure that like only the right people come in, only the right material comes in. So it's partly about getting rid of what we don't need, but it's also about being guarded about what is coming in, right? And so we can think about, do we need more of that energy in any part of our life as well? So let's take a few moments here and play a little bit with this night archetype. Right? Does anyone need another moment to look at their night energy? Okay, so when we look at the water element, the classical archetype is the philosopher. Yep, kind of just a disco Plato. I wanted to pick a less conventional philosopher here because it's such an interesting this idea of the water archetype of the philosopher is so intriguing for me because on one side it is considered like the most mature energy, right? That we go into more of our water archetype, like it's around the end of the year, it's in the end of our life. There's this idea of considering things and like not needing to be as involved and kind of letting things go by. But there's also this idea of just truth seeking and being in touch with your own knowledge and intuition and your own mysticism and your own all of that, right? And being able to not just be in touch with your own, but also searching for it, reading and talking and learning, right? And so I find that we end up with kind of complementary ideas of what the water element looks like, where sometimes it looks like that youth that is questing and that part of ourselves that is like ready to do a deep dive, and sometimes it looks like the philosopher sitting and just watching the world go. Um, there is an aspect with the water element on the philosopher of rest and that idea of things being done. And it's a different things being done than when we talked about the earth element. So because the question had come up earlier about the earth and the harvest, when we look at five elements in a year cycle, usually it's like there's that harvest with the earth, and then there's the decrease or the perfecting of certain things that happens with the metal. Um, Water and the philosopher is like, we're done now. The field is fallow. It's winter. Let everything rest, right? It's not it's not actually doing nothing. The seed is under the ground. The seed is germinating. The land needs to rest in order to be productive later, right? So it's the same with the philosopher. If I'm just sitting here, I look like I'm doing nothing, but maybe I am thinking, maybe I'm being creative, maybe I'm planning, right? And it's important for us to have space for all of that as well, and not just constantly jumping into the next thing. Recharging. Recharging. Yeah, exactly. And being able to also learn from what we've already done, right? What worked, what hasn't worked, what do we want to bring forward into this next energy? And so this time of year where we are right now is super interesting because people are doing this whole new year, new you. Oh, it's 2026. What are your goals for this year? But in reality, this is winter. Our body wants to actually be more in this water element philosopher's state right now. I mean, for those of you where it's winter, for those of us where it's not winter, we're in a different kind of state. So, you know, I know a lot of us are not in that. But like if you're in a winter state right now, your body doesn't want to go jump into a new exercise program. Your body wants to be considering and planning and thinking about what's going on next, right? This is also the archetype that is the most sort of deep and profound and maybe slower to act. So again, just considering before doing. So let's turn this back on here and give ourselves a couple moments to consider super energy. Does anybody need another minute? And then typically, if we were doing a five element kind of model, that would be the last one. But we are working from a much more GEMSy framework today. And so wanted to include this idea of working with the air element. And in thinking about the air element, and we work with this usually with central and governing vessels. Um, Again, this is not something we see so much in traditional Chinese medicine, but it is something that we're working with a lot in more modern kinesiology. We also have air elements show up more with Ayurvedic kind of traditions. And so I was thinking about what would the archetype look like to work with this air element, right? Because the other ones we're drawing from TCM. The archetypes that we've been going through are different than the Jungian archetypes that we work with say the GEMS archetypes elements class, right? So there's correlations and there's overlap, but they're different. And what I had come up with for this was the idea of the narrator. And so what do I mean by the narrator? The air element is about contextualizing as well as about creating space, right? When we are drawing five elements now, in some of the classes, if you've taken some GEMS classes and things, we usually are drawing the air element as being the circle that the five elements are sitting on, right? If we were thinking about this in physics, it's like all of the elements are like all of the moving parts of these like subatomic particles and that sort of thing. But the air is what actually allows everything to move. It's what holds everything together. It's what provides the energy of space, right? And so we're looking at what's happening between these different elements. How are we telling our story? How do we make sense of what's happening in all of these other spaces, right? How do we integrate all of these different goals and concepts and ideas? Because if we think of ourselves as all of these distinct parts, if we think of ourselves as a general and a wizard and a mother and a knight and a philosopher, right? Who is who's the I that shows up in all of those different parts so that it's not like multiple personalities, it's all part of the same. Does that make sense? So this is what allows for that kind of integration. So I think this is maybe a tricky thing for us to think about as far as goals go, because what does this mean? But this might be about how we balance all of the different parts of ourselves, how we are choosing to move forward. For those of you that are involved in creative writing or other creative endeavors, this might be about how we take all of those parts and present them to the world so they create a coherent story, right? So let's play with that for a moment. Give ourselves another couple minutes here. Anyone need another moment for looking at that element? So now that we've had a chance to take a couple minutes with each one of these and to make some notes, let's just take 2 more minutes and look back through what you have for each one of these and just check in. Is there anything that you need to add to any of these pages now that you've done something else, right? Because sometimes we put something on one and then it's like, oh, I really actually need to look at the beginning of that, not just the end of it or whatever. So let's just take one more moment here to kind of consider and add anything else that we want to add. How are we doing? Okay. Before we move into a little balance, I'm curious if anybody has anything that they want to share or anything like that from going through this, anything that surprised you that you came up with as you started moving through it, or any questions?
I would be curious to know if anyone would like to share that last one, the air. I kind of struggled with that one a little bit, trying to get my mind around it. If anyone has any that they would like to share, would be wonderful. Or an example, I guess.
Does anyone else have anything that they want to share from that?
Sure, I will. Can you hear me? Yes. Um, I kind of shifted the word narrator to observer. So, in terms of a storyline, then we would know the plot and we would know the ending, and then we would know how to guide our characters or our archetypes to where they need to be.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have
She
some
also
ideas.
mentioned, sorry,
Oh, sorry.
just
Yes.
I was just gonna add that when we were talking about, she also mentioned that like all of those elements or archetypes would know when to show up at the right moment in time or in the given situations.
Yeah. Ezra, did you want to share something?
Oh, yes. I really appreciated what you were saying about the narrator sort of being a static pod that exists amongst the disparate parts, or at least that's how I was sort of translating it in my head. Um, that we can have these different aspects and we are sort of permitted to pay individual attention to them without our sense of self or ego completely falling to pieces, right? Because we have this core that can observe it externally, right? And it occurred to me that if you have the narrator sort of holding things together, a narrative, a story, um, your five elements can form a five-man band, which is a perfect literary trope, right? You have the leader and the foil, and it all works very well. The air element feels special to me right now because I've been playing with some philosophical theories. I've been playing with the idea that our universe is subjective, right? You create a universe by perceiving it. The things that you perceive are your universe, right? There's an objectivity to things. There is a way that things are, but it's sort of like an axle. And then our universe is a wheel that spins around it. It is a subjective universe. And it sort of feels like the inverse of the air element in a way, right? We have a core holding things together, and then we have the stories that are perpetuated around it. I thought that was a fun idea.
This is the danger of asking questions like this in our house.
I went a different direction if we want.
Yeah, let's hear it. Why not?
Because if you want a more literal translation, part of the air element is it's the space in between. Like it's the space that holds the other things. And so I wrote down a couple more maybe metaphorical things, but also just like taking better care of my space. Like the actual physical house that I live in. And being really intentional on how that is set up. Or how a room is set up for you to be able to do whatever you need to do in that space. And then also for me, remembering that the in-between things count, the little bits, little progress, or, it doesn't have to be a whole thing for it to count, is kind of the thing that I'm working with this year. So that falls into air for me as well. Like, yeah, the gray space in between still has value and still counts, and it's okay to be in that space rather than like entirely in one of the archetypes, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
I even included in mine some like literal narration kind of stuff. And what I mean by that is like, I know for me, I spend so much time in my own head because a lot of my work happens in my own head. And then a lot of my own, like I write courses and I read and I do all of these things and it all happens in here. And sometimes I'm bad for not realizing that other people don't understand the process that has happened here. So I will say things like I'm assuming that you've come on this journey with me and you understand exactly what I mean when I say this in here. And people are like, what are you talking about? And I don't know, I'm sure other people do that too, where we play out things or something like that, and we believe that we've communicated that clearly to others and we have not. And so I'm even looking at that, just like one of the things I wrote on mine is literally just taking the time to talk things out so that I'm not either stuck in my own head circling, or so that I don't make assumptions about what other people think or what other people know based on the discourse that has happened for me in that time, right? Yeah.
I'm taking bits of what you guys said, putting them in here. The other thing that I had was like reaffirming yourself as the priority of your life, right?
Yeah.
Like
you're the hero of your own story.
Not focusing entirely upon other people, because at that point then you are ancillary in your own system, right? And it reduces your ability to take care of other people.
All right.
That is true. I had that thought several times going through these exercises. Like, if I'm not taking care of the foundations, I'm not much good to anyone. And we all know that, but it comes back sometimes to bite us when we're trying to show up for everyone but ourselves, and we can be so much more effective when we are taking care of the big things, you know, foundational things. Yeah.
Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to share or ask or anything?
I don't know any of the elements, not
Yeah, about any of it.
Yeah, I would like to share. I had a totally different approach. So I have a goal for this year, and with each element and what I saw, I was writing it down. And what came into my eyes that I marked, and what would be beneficial for my goal. And it was really interesting because it was like the letters were bigger. I wrote it down, and then I looked at all the choices, and yeah, just popped up, and I marked it. And it's unbelievable what how the relationship is to my goal from 2026.
All right. Going once, going twice. Okay. So it is all well and good that we have made some notes and we have some ideas about how we want to show up in these different ways for this next year. But we are most of the people here, we're energetic kinesiologists. We have practical tools to help us clear old stuck energy and to help us bring other energy in and actually be able to work with each of these things. So let's go through and do a little 5-element kind of balance to actually help us work with this. And I figured we would end up doing, in my head, when I was looking at this, I thought we would end up doing 2 different aspects to this. One that's more of a visualization kind of aspect, and one that's maybe also tracing meridians so that we're also doing something physically to kind of like lock this energy into the body and remove anything that feels stuck in that space. So, why don't we start just by feeling like you're in a good grounded kind of space. And with the idea of working with all of these intentions and energies that we've kind of set up for this next year. If you're the kind of person that puts a word on your year or something like that, or there is some kind of overarching theme that you have noticed as you've gone through this today, feel free to think about that now. Also, you can put some kind of subjective assessment on it if you like how possible does that feel on a scale of 1 to 10? Or how difficult does that feel on a scale of 1 to 10? Where am I at right now? Where do I feel sticky? Right? And so then, once we have that feeling kind of set, we are going to move into working with these elements. And I would suggest that we actually start with air, the way that we typically would with a 5-element kind of balance, because we're setting a core in the yin yang integration of the body in the space that then allows everything else to play. So thinking about that idea, the narrator, the observer, the space between, the integration. And then we're going to trace conception vessel 3 times. So we're starting at the pubic bone and tracing up the front of the body. And then tracing the governing vessel. So starting down at the tailbone and bringing the energy up the spine. You kind of toss it to yourself, bring it over the head and to the top lip. Harmony between yin and yang, harmony between earth and heaven, harmony between spirit and body, harmony between all those things. All right, and we'll just take a breath there. And then we can move into the wood element. So that idea of working with the general, that this is energy that is dependable, it's forceful, it's stable. It's also about growth and strength and flexibility, adaptability. Get your roots down, but also be able to march forward and be able to lead who you need to lead. And you might want to stand to work with these meridians. So when we work with our governing vessel meridian, you're not going to be able to see all of me, but our governing vessel is going to start here at the corner of the eye. And then we're going to make a little loop, and we're going to go forward and back a couple times on the side of the head.
Gallbladder, not governing vessel.
Oh, did I say governing? I'm sorry, I meant gallbladder. We're going to bring it in on the side. We're going to bring it down along the hips, and we're going to come down the outside of the leg to the fourth toe. And when you come down this last time, you're going to stay down and come over to the inside of the big toe, the lateral side of the big toe, and come up the inside of the legs, out slightly at the waist, and then up on the ribs, right underneath the nipples, basically. And this is the liver meridian. Right? And then again, same thing, just take a breath here and feel this energy, that strong, rooted kind of space. And then we can move into fire element, wizard archetype kind of energy. So the excitement, the passion, the joy, being able to engage others, being able to use charisma and energy to get things done. Also remembering that we want to be able to find ways of like keeping that energy up, right? And continuing with things and having that kind of commitment. And so then when we're working with the fire element, we know that the fire gets divided in a couple different ways in Touch for Health and kinesiology. We'll work with the two major meridians for this particular balance. So we're going to work with heart, bringing the energy down the bottom inside of the arm and up to the little fingers. Both sides. And then the last time, we're going to turn the arm over and coming from the little finger up the outside of the arm, take a little jog down the back of the shoulder, come up over here on the cheek, and then back to the ear. This is the small intestine meridian. All right. Then take a moment and feel that excited, bouncy, sparkly kind of energy, wizard energy. Like there's fire in your hands. Chi, right? Okay, and then we're going to move on to the earth element and that mother archetype kind of energy. So remember that this is the energy that is nurturing and is being nurtured. It's about being centered, grounded, being able to harvest, right? To see what is ready and be able to make use of it, to be careful when needed, to find balance, to show them. And you feel that calm, centered, very stable kind of energy here in the body. And so then we can work with the stomach meridian, which is going to start under the eyes and come up to the top of the head and then come down the outside of the body, front of the body to the second toe. And this time when you come down, move to the inside of the big toe, so the medial side of the big toe, And we're going to run up the body, up into the crease under the arms and down the side of the ribs for the spleen meridian. You feel that solid core that everything else can radiate out from. All right. Then our metal element, this is our knight, right? It's about protection. It's about the shield, but it's also about perfection. And not perfection in a bad way, but like that aspect of perfecting something, of polishing it, of making it exactly what it is that you want. Right? Getting rid of anything that is excess. That can be clutter, that can be negative thoughts, whatever it is. We're just getting rid of all of that and we're making what we have exactly right for us. Okay? And so then we're going to work with the lung meridian, coming down the inside of the arm again, but this time the top inside of the arm and to the thumb. Both sides. And then when you come down this time, again, you're going to turn the arm over and we're going to come to the index finger and come up the outside of the arm, across the front, to the side of the jaw, and to the opposite side of the nose for the large intestine meridian. And feel that space where everything is the way that you mean for it to be. And there's nothing extra. Feeling very protected. And then lastly, we can move into the water element and that idea of the philosopher. So remember, this is the element of maximum repose. The philosopher is comfortable sitting, looking like they're doing nothing, but actually thinking and considering and creating, right? That time is important. Being able to look at things from a deep and profound point of view, being able to flow, right? Being able to undo resistance the way that water can, just take a different path. It's fine. We're water. We can just make it happen that way. But also bringing in that idea of like, what does the philosopher do? Takes big concepts and makes it into something that makes sense. So we're going to work with our bladder meridian. And our bladder meridian, we're going to start at the inside corner of the eye. We're going to run over the top of the head like water falling down. Imagine a double channel. So one running down the side of the spine and one further out on the back. Down the back of the legs, and off the little toe. And again, we're going to do this 3 times. And on the 3rd time, again, we're going to stay down here at our feet. And you're going to touch under the ball of the foot is kidney 1. And then make a little circle around the ankle. And come up the front of the body. Okay. And you're just going to come all the way up to those points we were rubbing for our switch-ons at the beginning, under the collarbone. And take a moment to think about that stillness, that grace, that deepness of our water element and philosopher. All right. If you created some kind of assessment at the beginning of this balance, and you were thinking about how possible something seemed, or how difficult something seemed, or what your energy is like, or whatever it is, now is a good time to stop and check back in. Has that changed? Do you feel different about it? If you did a muscle test at the beginning, is your muscle response different now? And just check in with your body. All right. And that's the end of our balance. So what I'm going to do in a second here is turn off the recording. Thank you all for being here as part of this. I hope that you found something of value in this today. And as I said, for people that are already members of GEMS College, we will probably not next week because we've got other things planned for Study Hall this next week. But we will probably, as we go into February, take a Study Hall time to kind of go over things and create some plans and some accountability chats and that sort of thing. And of course, there's always that going on in the Discord server. For anyone who's not a member of GEMS College, this is, I don't want to sound pitchy, but we had set up something at the beginning of this year. If anyone would like to try out premium membership for a few months at no charge, we would love to have you just come be part of our little community. And we do things like this. We do balances together. We do study hall. We do office hours with mentors in different modalities of kinesiology. And so if any of those things feel interesting to you, reach out and we'll set you up. And you can just like hang out with us until April and see what you think and whether this is something that would be helpful for you. Because I'm really loving what's happening with our little community. And I would love to see it spread to more people because I feel like the conversations that we're having and the work that we're doing together is really, really important. So I'm going to turn this off at this point, and then you guys don't have to leave. We can stay and chat about things, but we're going to turn off the recording. So thank you.